Hello, and welcome to the South Dakota Tobacco Control Program's webinar entitled The Problem of Youth E-Cigarette Use. The purpose of this presentation is to address the epidemic related to youth e-cigarette use, which is a growing problem in South Dakota and across the United States. It's important to first look at the trend of commercial tobacco use, which has drastically declined over the years. It is a fact that almost 90% of all regular smokers begin smoking at or before the age of 18. This means that hardly anybody tries their first cigarette before they are of legal age to actually do so, which is why our prevention efforts primarily focus on people below the age of 18. One statistic that speaks volumes is that smoking kills more people than alcohol, AIDS, car crashes, illegal drugs, murders, and suicides combined, which really sets the tone for how deadly commercial tobacco products are. The point of this presentation is not to preach at people about smoking cigarettes or chewing tobacco and teaching them about how bad they are, because we most likely already know this. We live in a generation that has been taught throughout the years to stay away from using these products because we know the true amount of damage and destruction that they can cause. But we are still going to show you just a little bit of data so you can see how these rates have dropped over the years. Unfortunately, when we show you these rates, you will be able to see the comparison to e-cigarette use, which you will also see how they have dramatically increased over a very short period of time. As for middle school rates, this slide shows that data. We define current cigarette smoker or smokeless tobacco user as someone who has used tobacco on 1 or more days in the past 30 days. For South Dakota middle school students, 2% are current cigarette smokers compared to the national percentage of 2.1%. 2.6% are current smokeless tobacco users, compared to 1.9% in the U.S. 2.5% are current e-cigarette users, comparing that to 3.3% in the U.S. And just to show you, back in 2011, the data showed that only 0.6% of middle schoolers in the U.S. were currently using e-cigarette products. So this is showing how greatly it's increased over the years. I also like to point out that 8.2% of middle schoolers state that they have ever used e-cigarettes. And if you compare that data to the national data, only 1.7% of middle schoolers in the U.S. say that they have ever used these. However, that data was from 2011. Although the number of middle school students trying any tobacco product has dropped over the years, our data is showing us that the ever use of e-cigarettes is strikingly increasing. Next, we'll take a look at high school rates in South Dakota compared to the national rates. Unfortunately, we do not have 2017 South Dakota data available, so what you are seeing on this slide is the 2015 data for both South Dakota and the United States. For high school rates in South Dakota, 10.1% are current cigarette smokers compared to the U.S. percent of 10.8%. 11.7% of South Dakota high school students are defined as current smokeless tobacco users, and we compare that to a national rate of 7.3%. 17.3% of high school students in South Dakota are current e-cigarette users, and we compare that to 24.1% of U.S. high school students. Again, it's interesting to note the increase from the data back in 2011, when only 1.5% of high school students in the U.S. reported being current e-cigarette users. Another alarming statistic is that 41% of high school students in South Dakota report that they have ever used e-cigarettes, and we compare that to a national percentage of 44.9%. The most staggering statistic, in fact, is that 41% have ever used the e-cigarettes in South Dakota high school students. This number is alarmingly high and likely includes a number of young people who would have never tried your typical commercial tobacco products. What's also very concerning is that if a young person tries these products and experiments with them one time, that they may end up addicted to nicotine and become a lifelong addicted user of the product. We'll also just take a moment to look at our adult data in South Dakota, which shows that 18% of South Dakota adults are current cigarette smokers, compared to 17% in the U.S. 6% of South Dakota adults are current smokeless tobacco users, compared to 4% in the U.S. and only 3% of adults in South Dakota define themselves as current e-cigarette users. Unfortunately, we don't have any comparative U.S. data available at this time. So, as you might notice, our adult rates related to e-cigarettes are much lower than our youth rates, which really reiterates the fact that we need to be working to prevent our young people from starting on these products and be sure that we're also helping them to quit if they've already started. So, getting down to what are e-cigarettes. Now we're just going to go into a little bit more detail about that. For the purpose of this presentation, I will refer to them as e-cigarettes, but in the world of tobacco control and prevention, you'll sometimes hear us refer to them as electronic nicotine delivery systems, or more simply put, ENDS. So e-cigarettes are battery-operated devices that when heated, when they heat a liquid and convert it into an aerosol, which is then inhaled and delivers nicotine, flavors, and other chemicals to the user. There are a lot of names out there for e-cigarettes, and just to name a few of them, they're referred to as e-cigs, e-hookahs, mods, vape pens, vapes, Juuls, and that's just to name a few. There's plenty more out there. What we're finding is that young people might refer to these products simply as Juuls, or they might refer to vaping as juuling. So we need to make sure that we're making everyone understand that although they go by many different names, they're all the same thing. Unfortunately, Juul products specifically have become wildly popular with our young people. Vaping, smoking e-cigarettes, and juuling are all the same thing, just by a different name. So it's important to remember that. So what do they look like? This image just gives us a nice visual of what some of these products may look like. They're constantly evolving and changing and coming up with new products. But some e-cigarettes are made to look like your more regular cigarettes, which is what you'll see on the far right, or maybe look like a cigar, which you're seeing kind of on the far left, or a pipe. Some of them will resemble more of like a stick or a pen. Some are looking like USB drives and other items in our other-day lives. There are also larger devices, which you see as the larger tank devices on this image, and those are also referred to as mods, and they really don't resemble other tobacco products, so they kind of just look like another device that you maybe have never seen before, but what those are the tank systems or mods. And this is just another visual of the different types of e-cigarettes. It actually kind of shows the evolution of the vaping products as we know it today. They really started out with the first version, which were the mini e-cigarette products that you see on the left. They then evolved to the mid-sized products like the vape pens, which you see in the middle. And now they've evolved into things like the modified device, which are the larger customizable devices, which you see on the right. This is just yet another snapshot of the evolution of the e-cigarettes. Some e-cigarettes are designed to resemble regular cigarettes, while others look more like cigars, pipes, pens, and even USB drives. To account for the diversity in product design, some researchers have classified e-cigarettes as falling into either a first, second, or third generation of the devices. So the first generation e-cigarette is the one that closely resembles a cigarette and is likely disposable. The second generation e-cigarette is a larger, usually pen-shaped device that can be recharged and reused. And the third generation e-cigarette refers to devices that do not resemble your combustible cigarette and often have very large and sometimes customizable batteries. Some parts may be replaced, which is why they are sometimes called mods or modifiable. And these devices are also refillable, which is enticing to some of the users. More recently, e-cigarettes that have a sleek, high-tech design and are easily rechargeable have entered into the market. One device in particular, known as the Juul device, emerged in 2016 and quickly established itself as a leading e-cigarette product by early 2018. There has also been an emergence of plenty of copycat products that you're seeing on this slide, such as the Sur & Drop and the My Blue, and they follow Juul's blueprint of a high-tech look and high nicotine delivery through the use of nicotine e-liquid formulations. This is another snapshot of the Juul e-cigarette product. So since 2016, the e-cigarette brand Juul has really surged in popularity among our young people. As of June 2018, They have taken over 68% of the e-cigarette market share. Juul's e-cigarette emergence into the market has been so rapid that national surveillance systems have yet to ask specifically about its use. Unfortunately, we are hearing a lot of stories about these products being used in schools, during class, in bathrooms, and in other discrete ways within schools and places where kids should really not be using these products. A 2017 study by the Truth Initiative found that 6% of youth and 10% of young adults have used a Juul e-cigarette in the past 30 days. The study also found that while many young people are aware of Juul, many are unaware that the product always contains the addictive chemical nicotine. According to the product's website, a single Juul cartridge is roughly equal to a pack of cigarettes, or 200 cigarette puffs. Juul is promoted as a satisfying alternative to cigarettes and may be putting a new generation of youth at risk of nicotine dependence and future cigarette use. Juul comes in a variety of flavors, such as fruit medley, mango, cool cucumber, and creme brulee. Flavors in tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, have been proven to appeal to young people. Flavored e-cigarettes are especially dangerous, not only because they attract youth, but because their young users are likely to be misinformed about the harmfulness of the product. So what's in the aerosol? It's very important to first point out that e-cigarette aerosol is not harmless water vapor, and it is difficult for consumers to know what e-cigarette products actually contain. The e-cigarette aerosol that users breathe from the device and exhale can be very harmful, and they contain potentially harmful substances, including nicotine, ultrafine particles, flavoring such as diacetyl, a chemical linked to serious lung disease, various volatile organic compounds, cancer-causing chemicals, heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead. And as time goes on, we know that we'll learn more about these and discover what other harmful substances are found within them. Unfortunately, the aerosol produced by e-cigarettes almost always contains nicotine, which is the highly addictive drug found in our commercial tobacco products, like cigarettes, cigars, and other tobacco products. Many e-cigarettes being marketed as containing no nicotine have still been found to contain nicotine, meaning that if you or someone you know has ever claimed there is zero nicotine in the e-cigarettes they are using, it is likely that some nicotine is still present in the vapor. So the next question is, are they harmful? The answer is yes, absolutely, they are harmful. Scientists are still learning about the long-term health effects of e-cigarettes, but we do know that the use of products containing nicotine poses a threat to youth. Not only is nicotine highly addictive, but it can also harm brain development, and an adolescent brain isn't fully developed until the age of 25. So even if a product says zero nicotine, it still is not safe for someone to use because it likely does contain the nicotine, which could potentially be harmful to the adolescent's developing brain. Some of the ingredients in e-cigarette aerosol could also be harmful to the lungs in the long term. For example, some e-cigarette flavorings may be safe to eat, but they are not safe to inhale because the gut can process more substances than the lungs can filter. It has been found that e-cigarette use is being linked to its users developing popcorn lung, which is caused by diacetyl, a chemical found in e-cigarette juice. When inhaled, diacetyl causes bronchiolitis, more commonly referred to as popcorn lung. Bronchiolitis obliterans, more commonly referred to as popcorn lung, a scarring of the tiny air sacs in the lungs resulting in the thickening and narrowing of the airways. While the name popcorn lung may not sound like a threat, it's a serious lung disease that causes coughing, wheezing, and shortness of breath, similar to the symptoms of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, also known as COPD. Defective e-cigarette batteries have also caused fires and explosions, a few of which have resulted in very serious injuries. So once again, the answer to the question, are they harmful, is yes, they are very harmful. This slide shows the South Dakota Youth Access Law related to tobacco products. Go ahead and take a moment to read over this slide, but the bottom line is that in South Dakota, it is illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to purchase, possess, or use tobacco products, including e-cigarettes. In 2016, the Food and Drug Administration finalized a rule extending the Center for Tobacco Products regulatory authority to cover all tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, that meet the definition of a tobacco product. FDA regulates the manufacture, import, packaging, labeling, advertising, promotion, sale, and distribution of ends, or e-cigarettes, including components and parts of ends, but excluding accessories. It is also important to look at how the marketing by the tobacco industry and e-cigarette companies spend their money and direct their marketing efforts. After the Master Settlement Agreement, the tobacco industry shifted to advertising their products more heavily in the retail environment, such as in places like convenience stores. We are seeing the same trends with e-cigarette products of the past, but the industry is also going back to its old tricks with their efforts of marketing e-cigarettes everywhere that they used to get away with marketing their commercial and original tobacco products. Each year, the tobacco industry spends $9.5 billion on tobacco advertising in the U.S. So that breaks down to being about $27.5 million per year in South Dakota. For your commercial tobacco products, the most heavily advertised brands are Marlboro, Newport, and Camel. And as part of that Master Settlement Agreement, as I mentioned, the tobacco advertising was banned from many venues, such as billboards, radio, all sorts of things. And that's where they shifted more to the retail environment. As I mentioned, what we're now seeing is that the e-cigarette products are being marketed everywhere that the tobacco industry used to get away with advertising their commercial products. So you're seeing it TV, radio, magazines, pretty much everywhere you look at retail environments, etc. I always like to just throw a few tobacco industry quotes in that we're able to gain access to after the Master Settlement Agreement went through in 1998. As a part of the settlement agreement, the tobacco industry was forced to make some of their internal documents public. Many of these documents they never imagined that the public would ever be able to see, but now we actually have proof that their marketing tactics involve targeting our young people. So the quotes listed on this slide were actually taken directly from internal tobacco industry documents. One of them being, it's a well-known fact that teenagers like sweet products. Honey might be considered. Cherry Skull is for somebody who likes the taste of candy, if you know what I'm saying. We have been asked by our clients to come up with a package design, a design that's attractive to kids. And this one really gets to me. Today's teenager is tomorrow's potential regular customer. The smoking patterns of teenagers are particularly important to Philip Morris. So the next few slides I'll go over rather quickly. These are just showing kind of proof that the tobacco industry is following its old marketing tactics, and they are currently getting away with marketing their e-cigarettes through pretty much any avenue that they so choose. The following are just examples of how they're copying their old playbook in regards to advertising. Number one, they're using celebrity spokespeople. Number two, they have magazine ads featuring rugged men and glamorous women. Number three, they're sponsoring sports and music festivals. They're using sweet flavors. They're using cartoon characters. They're going with the idea of switch, don't quit. And that's just to name a few. So, what did we learn? First of all, we learned that e-cigarette use has surpassed commercial tobacco use among our young people. Secondly, we know now that e-cigarettes go by many different names. Juul happens to be the current most popular brand, but who knows when that will change, if that will change, and what new products will enter the market. E-cigarette aerosol is not just a harmless water vapor, so don't believe people who tell you that it is. And e-cigarettes are harmful to the users. And the bottom line, don't fall for the marketing tricks and be aware of how they are using marketing tactics to lure in new users. So what can youth do? Number one, our youth can get involved in this effort and fight e-cigarettes by educating themselves and others on the harm of tobacco, nicotine, and e-cigarette use. Our young people could learn to advocate for tobacco-free properties and make sure that e-cigarettes are included in any of these policies that they work on. making sure that they're including e-cigarettes in school tobacco-free buildings and grounds policies, in smoke-free or tobacco-free parks policies, and the list goes on and on. They can also help out by sharing resources for quitting tobacco. On this slide, we've gone ahead and just listed some reliable resources for use in regards to the topic of e-cigarettes. And it is also important to mention that we do now have available a small resource guide on the topic of e-cigarettes that relates to our different sectors of schools, healthcare, youth, parents, etc. So if you would like more information or you'd like to get your hands on that resource guide, please be in touch with your regional tobacco prevention coordinator. And I have listed those contacts on this slide. We have a central region tobacco prevention coordinator whose phone number is listed there, as well as the counties that is covered. And then I have the Northeast region, the Southeast region, and the Western region. So just find what county you live within and contact that regional coordinator, and they would be glad to assist you with getting the resource guide or any other information you might need related to this topic. And once again, we would like to thank you for listening to our webinar, and have a great day.